Now, some other ways of looking at Jesus. In the Old Testament, Yahweh, Jehovah, was considered the healer. Adonai Rophe, okay, the Lord, the healer. And in Matthew picks up on this and stuff, and so you see Jesus as a healer in the book of Matthew. And there's two types of miracles that Jesus does. One is called therapeutic miracles, and that's when Jesus actually heals somebody and actually, like fixes them. They've got some physical malady and he fixes it. That's called a therapeutic miracle. But there's also non-therapeutic miracles. Now, a non-therapeutic miracle would be, say, Jesus walks on the water. Nobody got healed. There was no therapeutic thing. There was Jesus just walks on the water. Okay, or at the transfiguration where Jesus is transfigured and, becomes transfigured in front of them. That's, again, it's a miracle. It's a miracle, but it's not a therapeutic miracle. So there's two types of miracles, therapeutic and non-therapeutic miracle. And then as you look at the therapeutic miracles, there's some beautiful stories in the book of Matthew, chapter 8, for example. There's a centurion. Now, this centurion is a Roman centurion. Okay, so he's coming from Rome. He's over 100 guys. Their legions usually came. Their legions were usually, around 6? I don't know. The legions were quite huge. And then in the legions, it was broken up at various levels. And this guy was over 100 people. So he's a centurion. He's kind of a big figure. He's an important figure. He's a centurion. He's a Roman centurion. Again, the Jews are under the Romans, and so the centurion's usually negative Roman domination. They're feeling that kind of thing. The centurion comes to Jesus, and the centurion then is asking Jesus to come heal his servant because his servant is really struggling, and there's some medical problem with this servant. And Jesus, he basically asked Jesus, man, you come and heal my servant, okay? Now, it's very interesting that the centurion's over 100. Is he concerned about his servant? The centurion is so concerned about his servant. He's not coming for himself. He's coming for his servant. And I just think that shows something of the character of the centurion. The centurion doesn't play it as the big, I am the mighty centurion who is over 100 Roman soldiers and I can blow people away and do... No. This centurion has got a servant who's suffering, and he comes to Jesus to ask Jesus for help. That puts him then what? In terms of his status, it puts the centurion under Jesus. He's coming to Jesus begging for help for his servant. Okay? That means that he's got to get off his high centurion horse and get down under Jesus and make a request to Jesus. Now, the problem is the centurion comes to Jesus, and Jesus says, okay, I'll go with you. And the centurion stops Jesus and says, I'm not worthy for you to come into my house. I am not worthy for you to come into my house. Again, the centurion, you see the humility of this man. He's a very powerful man, but you see his humility. I'm not worthy for you to come into my house. And then he says, I am a man under authority, and I understand that. I speak, and people do what I say. Yeah, I'm the man. I'm the man. I speak, and I can send people to their death. I speak, and people go do my bidding. I am the man. I know what it's like to be under authority and to have people where you speak and they jump, because I am a centurion. And he says to Jesus, just speak the word, and my servant will be cured. And what's Jesus' comment? Jesus is kind of, usually Jesus is rebuking his disciples. You guys still don't get it, or, you owe you of little faith. And he's rebuking them and things like that, his own disciples. He turns to the centurion, and the centurion says, just speak the word. You don't have to come to my house. My house is not worthy of you. Just speak the word, and he'll be healed. And Jesus says what? I have not found such faith in all Israel. I have not found such faith. The centurion. Jesus speaks the word, and the guy is healed. The servant is healed. Beautiful story. Jesus speaking and things happening. Now, by the way, anybody from Old Testament class, you remember who speaks and things happen. In the beginning, God created, and he said, let there be light, and there was light. Okay? God spoke, and things came into being. Psalm 33:6. He spoke by his word. And now you've got Jesus speaking and healing people. The maladies of life, the things that are wrong in life, Jesus can speak and make them right and heal this person. So it's just kind of really cool one there with the centurion's servant. The other one is as he's going to, there's this guy who comes up, his name is Jairus. Jairus has got a daughter who's on the verge of death, is going to die and stuff. Jesus is going to go heal her as well. So another therapeutic miracle. This is in Matthew chapter 8. Matthew chapter 8 and 9, a lot of miracles in Matthew chapter 8 and 9. Chapter 13, Matthew and the parables. But chapters 8 and 9, Matthew, a lot of miracles. So Jesus is going through the crowds, everybody's pushing Jesus and things, and then all of a sudden, how does Jesus heal? Well, we just saw with the centurion, he spoke and it happened. But how does he heal a lot of times? Through touch. So he's pushing, the people are pushing him in the crowds, he's going to Jairus, the guy's his daughter's dying and stuff, going to die and stuff, and so he's going to the guy's house to heal her and stuff. And he's going through the crowd's pushing, and all of a sudden, this woman comes up and says, man, if I could just touch the hem of his garment, man, if I could just touch his garment, I'll be healed. She's hemorrhaging blood. She's hemorrhaging blood for years, has been to many doctors, and no one's been able to heal her. And she said, if I could just touch the hem of his garment. She pushes through the crowd. She touches him, and all of a sudden, now, you got to think of this from a Jewish perspective. She's a woman who's hemorrhaging blood. Is she clean or is she unclean? Think about the book of Leviticus we studied last semester. Is she clean or is she unclean? She's hemorrhaging blood. She's unclean. She's unclean. Now, how does cleanness pass? Usually, cleanness and uncleanness passes through touch. And if someone's unclean, say, has leprosy, and they touch you, basically you then are unclean until the evening, and you got to wash and various things like that. So this unclean woman comes up to Jesus, and she touches his garment. Jesus should be made unclean. But instead, what happens? It backfires on her. She touches him, and she becomes clean. She's healed. And Jesus turns to her and basically says to her, no, it's not you touching my garment and stuff, man. It's your faith that's healed you and stuff. Jesus has healed her. So it's beautiful, beautiful passage there with this woman. Again, how did Jesus heal her? Through touch. She touched Jesus and was healed. The other one, I think, the touch, and just off the top of the head, it's also in Matthew chapter 8 there. Do you remember Peter's mother-in-law? Peter had a mother-in-law, okay? And Peter's mother-in-law is sick with a fever. And how does Jesus heal Peter's mother-in-law? He comes over and touches her, takes her by the hand, and her fever departs. So Jesus touches people. And when Jesus touches people, he heals them, and they're made right. And it's just a beautiful image then of Jesus speaking and healing people, Jesus touching people. The touching means what? That Jesus is close. Okay? The touching is a very close kind of thing. And Jesus is close and touches people and heals them and things. And so you got the therapeutic music. Jesus is a healer. Jesus is a healer and heals people and things. It's wonderful with his touch and with his speech. He speaks and it happens. Okay, now, Emmanuel. This is another aspect. Now, when you say you're teaching the deity of Christ from the book of Matthew, most people, when they think about teaching the deity of Christ, you usually think about what book would you go to? If somebody's struggling with the deity of Christ, suppose, say, some Jehovah's Witnesses come to your door, and they start saying, well, Jesus is really a God, he's not really the God, and they start going off on all that with their New World Translation and things, and start trying to influence you and things. What book do you usually go to refute that, to show Jesus Christ is God? You usually go to John 1:1. In the beginning was the Word, Jesus. In the beginning was the Word was God, was with God, the Word was God. The Word was God. And the Word became flesh and dwelt among us. And so we know this is Jesus and stuff, and it's talking about the Word was God and things. And I and the Father are one. Other passages from the book of John. And, of course, they have all their refutations of those verses and stuff and mistranslations from their Bible and things. But usually you go to the book of John when you think about the teaching of Jesus as being as being deity. I want to look at the book of Matthew and just pick up this concept of the deity of Christ in Matthew. And one of the themes I want to pick up here is this notion of his name being Emmanuel. Now, most of you recognize this L at the end. L means God, okay? L is God. And then Emmanuel means with us. So God with us, okay? God with us. And this is a beautiful, it's an incredible, beautiful name. This is the name of Jesus. And he shall, save his people from their sin, and he shall be called Emmanuel, which means God with us. And so Matthew chapter 18, when he's talking about the church in the context of church discipline and things, he says, where 2 or 3 are gathered together, there am I in the midst. Where 2 or 3 are gathered, there am I in the midst. And so God, in terms of his Emmanuel, God with us kind of things. And then same thing over in the Great Commission. This is how the book ends. It's kind of interesting. The book of Matthew begins with this name Emmanuel, God with us, in the naming of Jesus early. And then the book ends with a Great Commission. In Matthew chapter 28, verses 18 through 20, this is how Matthew concludes this book. Jesus came and told his disciples, I have been given all authority in heaven and on earth. Therefore, go and make disciples. You see how important that discipleship theme is? Go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Teach these new disciples to obey all the commandments I have given you. And then he concludes this way. And be sure of this, I am with you always. I am with you always, even to the end of the age. I am with you always, Emmanuel, God with us. And so you get these great statements coming out of this name Emmanuel in the beginning of the book, in the middle of the book, and at the end of the book, this I am with you kind of thing, which is beautiful because he's asking his disciples to do some really tough stuff, that he is with them.